Sup shooters, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to SP Reviews, where today we're going to be checking out an album from a couple of musicians named Greg Barnett and Martin Hale off of their project titled Nothing at All. And if we switch over to here, we'll put the album out here. You'll notice a couple of changes between this one and the previous two reviews I've done for Greg Barnett. This album I'm planning on reviewing using my green screen, so I'm a bit bigger on the screen this time, so that should potentially be a bit of fun depending on how you feel about that. I'm still figuring out the kinks, but I think it's looking a little bit better and it's a bit more professional than having the square with like the stuff in the background. Now I am one with Music Bee, so that's great. Got a bit of a dark theme as well with the software here. A note. I did try to record this review in 24 FPS. However, the video camera I have it just didn't want a bar of it. You know, well, that thing where you have 60 FPS down to 24 and then you can kind of change that, and sometimes it can look like it's been done in slow motion. There's a bit of stuttery stuff going on. Yeah, no, the camera that I have was just doing that off the bat. So like literally I have a semi-decent DSLR over there. It just was not having a bar of me shooting at 24 FPS. Maybe I'm just not used to it. I know there's stuff like shutter speed that's involved with it as well. But I'll have a look into that in my own time. Anyways, we've got the album here. We've got a 12 tracks, joint project between Greg Barnett and Martin Hale. As I understand it, I could be wrong, and this could all be something I need to re-record. Just to clarify the situation, because I've reread through it, apparently none of these songs were co-written. The two musicians, Greg Barnett and Martin Hale, wrote, they produced and did everything for the song separately, but the idea Nothing at All is the concept of them. It's basically been inspired by them overcoming their own individual sort of like studio stuff, and this was them learning how to record and produce their own music and stuff like that and come to terms with that and make the best stuff they can. We're going to listen through the whole album. I'm going to do the first 6 tracks now and the final 6 tracks tomorrow, and this will be my last review of January 2022 going into February, so that's great. Let's just get started. Get declared Uberveillance part 1. Listen through these tracks from start to finish, what we think. Let's go. I'm liking that tone of those guitars, dude. That bop 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 kind of sass to them. Alright, we're going resolving back to the root. Oh, damn, man. I'm loving the production on this. The drums and the bass and guitar work really well together. A little bit of tension with those melodies here. And then resolving. Some flat sevenths in there, I think. With some jazzy, bluesy stuff going on there. Voicing itself well with the rest of the instruments here. I like the color of that solo.
Misty view, muffled sound. Opting out is not allowed. Chipped and tagged, stored away. We're all living in the cloud.
Oh, yeah, because as I understand it, this was made in like the mid-2010s, back when, people were starting to really get the hang of that surveillance stuff and how much we're being tracked and all that kind of stuff. So this made sense for the time, and it still does today.
Always on mobile generation. Greed and instant gratification. Throwaway upgrade nation. Freedom? Optimization. Just for tonight.
The guy has got a very sort of free flow methodology to the way he does his vocals. It's very different than how Greg sings. It's more of a sort of a conversation or a statement on the situation with things. But I like the difference there. I'm wondering if Greg will do some singing at some point. He's got a great voice.
Let's try direct. Don't need no password to connect. Stop drowning in this digital void. Save our precious love from being destroyed.
The blue light makes you stay.
Was that Greg there, or was that Martin Hale in his higher range?
touch every second of the day. Follow friends who follow you, or strangers in a crowded queue. Addicted but can't turn away. Hate myself but have to play. Propaganda, disinformation, information annihilation.
Can we kiss by candlelight? Don't want to meet online tonight. Let my cloud drift in your sky. Give a romance, baby, one more try.
It's interesting, like the vocals sound nice and clear in the mix. I'm not the greatest at getting vocals to sit with other things in the song, but I can recognize when it is done well. You got that nice side chaining of the kicks there with the other elements in the mix. And it's a nice change between the statements that are being made in the verse and then these chorus lines that are being focused on in the hook. Oh, a really fuzzy guitar there. I wasn't expecting more lead lines. It's very different to some of the material I've heard from Greg Barnett in the past. Some reasonably competent lead guitar work though.
No one's talking.
Oh, I'm back into the hook.
Stop. Jack me in, then jack me off.
Oh, Jack.
Bits and bytes can ID you. Track your moves, track what we do. We're oh so smart and oh so clever. Our data's stored somewhere forever. Data gulags, no control. In the cloud that has no soul.
Don't need no.
It's kind of terrifying when you think about it. There's some interesting sort of points being made here. It's crazy how we trust the cloud so much to just for the sake of convenience, right? But it's got, you know, like that system could just be down for a day, or it could just disappear because the company doesn't want to do it anymore, and you could just lose everything that you've put there. It's pretty wild when you think about that.
Or Quran. Facebook rules the world we're from.
I mean, I know like we're saying different things even in this falsetto section. I'm not trying to say that the exact same lines are repeated or anything like that, which was what arguably makes us more interesting, is that we don't just have these A-B structures, the verse, chorus. We've got differences in the interpretations of both of these, and while it is A-B with the occasional spin or break, there's no filler.
Flip the switch, right the wrong. Turn it off, let me turn you on.
That was stellar, dude. I was not expecting it to hit that hard. Like, really, I love that to pieces. I think that's just how eloquently those vocals came in on the sides. It was unexpected. It was something very, very fresh, and I have a lot of love to it. I think it's a valid point. You disconnect yourself from your technology, enjoy the music, live life, and celebrate outside of the cloud. Oh, some delay on that line. Some sensational vocal harmonies here. Like, that's the joy of having dynamic range in a recording, you know. When you have that level of between the quiet and loud parts, you can get away with having bits that kind of take you by surprise, because you know, oh, there's something whoosh right here or whoosh right here. It's not all the same loudness, where your ears get used to it very quickly, and you don't nearly get the dopamine hit of like there's a sudden shock or something later, or something that really hits the right way it needs to. I think it's great. Really interesting start to it. It's kind of a ballsy move having a 3-part track put throughout the song, but I think it's actually a smart move because it encourages the listener to listen through the entirety of the album to hear where the tail ends. So well done to Greg Barnett and Martin Hale for that. We've got The Coast, track number 2. We've got some Foley there, some seagulls by the ocean. Where are we going with The Coast? Oh, bit of darkness in there, but going back to that major resolution. Cool. The bass line shifts for subtly. It sounds like it's very loud. No, but it's fine. It's okay, I was just double checking, you know? I'm loving the instrumental focus in these tracks. I think it's awesome to hear these talented musicians play their parts adeptly, and really cool to not feel the need to thrash your way towards a vocal line. The listener's got faith in your ability to play harmonies, melodies, rhythms, and stuff that'll keep them entertained without needing to be spoon-fed a story. It's great. It creates this atmosphere where the tale can then be sort of put. And, you know, the way these themes and concepts progress and develop throughout is one of the things I like about Greg Barnett's music in particular. There's never a stock standard song unless he's making a statement about something where it needs to be like that. Oh, we just got the bass there. Is that like a synthesizer, or is it like a brass instrument or something like that? Yeah, you got the acoustic drum kit that's been handled reasonably well. The kick is a bit more subtle. Like, you got the click of it, don't get me wrong, and you can hear it in the mix. But it's not one of those in-your-face sampled kicks you get nowadays. It was like. I should probably put the album art back up, shouldn't I? Here we go. Can we put that up there? We could, couldn't we? Yeah, there we go. So this is just purely an instrumental track, isn't it? I dig it. I dig it. I like it. Oh, we got some choirs as well. And there's this like oscillation there. Wow. Like a flanger or a phase or something like that. And we've got the steel string guitars. Oh, going back to the main theme again. You know, like we talked before about how, you know, the what's it called? Prescient, the cloud Uberveillance. I wish here, we'll put it here for now. I don't know if it's covering me or not. I'll be over it anyways, it's fine. But the coast, the cloud Uberveillance one, I was talking about disconnecting from the digital sort of like fantasy land and all that kind of stuff and the dangers of it, and now this is kind of helping you to imagine being on a coast with the different nature noises and the freedom that comes with that and the beauty of that. Slick. fantastic. It's a beautiful track. It's got a lovely tonality to it, lots of interesting colorations within it with these extended harmonies. And there's constant change with the melodic instruments in the lead lines. We got this consistent eighth note groove there. It doesn't really shift away from that. The groove is continuous, which allows you to get lulled and sucked into it. It's a lot calmer than that first song. It's trying to give you an alternative to what's instantiated within that first part. It's stunning, like, how much it makes you nostalgic for something that you didn't even know you wanted or needed. Like, I never had a massive love for the beach, but, you know, like in New Zealand, the beaches, at least when I was growing up, it was a lot cooler. The beaches were cold a lot of the time, you know. Nowadays, it's like 25 to 30 degrees because of a lot of different things. But yeah, it makes me want to go to the beach, even though I never had a massive love for it. It's almost like it's saying, hey, here's something you can try to find peace, to find escape. It's escapism in nature. It's interesting stuff. That was The Coast. Really well written. Clearly, you know, by having this track here, we've shown that we can make both sort of vocal-led songs like the Cloud Uberveillance, and then we can do instrumentals well, and you've covered both your bases and led the listener to a point where if they're still listening, they know what you're capable of, and they're typically fairly happy with it. Dilmun, number 3. Oh, we've got some electro vibe. What are we doing here? What's going on with this one? This is very different, isn't it? Wow. I would never have expected this, dude. We've got electro synths for drums with like, what are those? Indian folk instruments? Cultural instruments? I don't know the names of them, and I feel incredibly ignorant about that. Chord note groove on the drums, on the percussion. That sounds like an electric kit or something like that. It's a great sound. I love the tone of it. It works well within this composition.
Easter on the beach. Hey, Jassim's on the take. On the island up to the seas. Dilmun.
Is this Greg here singing? Excellent, and we have the 5th bar here as a little counterweight to the verse stanza we had before. Cool.
Sand is glowing hot.
Cool.
DAWs are cruising cool.
There's so much present
Touch the
within this.
turquoise ocean, Dilmun.
It's fascinating. Again, it's very different to the Coast or Uberveillance, but that's great. Is it supposed to be? I suppose we'll get more of a context if we listen to it, eh?
Hey, open up your heart. Open up your mind. Bow down, face stone.
This is one of the heaviest songs that Nothing at All has put out so far, or Greg Barnett. I dig it. I love it to pieces. I think it's got a great, again, that chord note groove, that pulse. Easy to nod your head to, and it's almost like you're agreeing what they're saying without even realizing it.
Gerada Island beauty. Pepsi Cola smile. Ride the golden falcon.
Same 2-bar gap. Boom. Oh, see, that's where it's unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get. I love that to pieces. I think it's fantastic. We're playing with the listener's expectations and keeping things fresh. It's 101, but it's still valid. It's still valid. It's good to point out.
Open up your mind.
Why have I got my camera?
There
we go. I hope I haven't broken anything. I'm a kid. I tend to do that when I overexert myself. I think that they're like still in a good place.
Yellow.
This groove, this vibe to it, it's explorative, adventurous, and passionate, and I dig that. I was thinking we had some Beatles vibe for a moment. There's some fun stuff going on. Dilmun. I mean, is this like some folk stuff? Oh, some Egyptian vibes here. We've got all sorts of fun stuff going on. Is that a camel or something like that? That sounds like a camel. It sounds distorted though. It's like a distorted camel. It's a fun instrument. I know it's a sample, don't get me wrong, but... With those electric drums, those drum machines, and the and it's just a fun sort of move away from what was previously put into the song, and not entirely sure of the context there, whether it's a comment on that part of identity or it's just a musical concept they wanted to explore. I just want to go back to the chorus. There we go. That's what I wanted.
Open up your heart.
Okay, we're opening up our heart.
Open up your mind.
Opening up the mind, yep.
Bow down, face the stone, Dilmun.
Bow down, face the stone. So it's about spiritual enlightenment or something like that. Kind of opening yourself up to an alternative to what's currently present. That's kind of cool. Again, I'm feeling incredibly... I don't know enough about certain like parts of the world and their religions and stuff like that, but that's just something I can learn more about. I enjoyed hearing this track though. I think it's fairly well written. Again, its own unique identity. I'm sure it showed the best values of both musicians involved. That's the first 3 tracks. We've got Colors Fade, number 4.
The colors starting.
There we go. I'm used to that. Oh, complete vibe shift immediately, dude.
Greens turn to gray.
To gray. I mean, I'm not a singer. But the fact that I want to fill in the gap with a melody that I quite like shows that you got a song that's a banger straight off the gate.
Stops us thinking what we're doing is doing nothing at all.
I wasn't sure where that melody was going to go as you descended into nothing at all. But when you think about that as a concept, it's like fading into nothing at all. I'm going to do something here real quick, just because it's showing nothing at all down here. Here we go. That's better. We'll continue with that.
Nature tells us what to do.
And are we ignoring nature? Is that the cloud of Uberveillance part?
And here we're turned into fools. There's something coming on, but our colors fade in the sun. We sing our tune.
We got some chimes as well leading into it. There's a lovely transition there. I adore it. We got a dun da 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 dun da 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 dun. You got a triplet groove there going on the 4/4.
Run, a lullaby, though other cries sound so close by, floating downward slow for the fall.
I love the way that nothing at all. They use strings to just lift the emotional, the atmosphere of it, to add a texture and a complexity to it, to elevate things and to really pull at the heartstrings.
What to do. We can't hear, we are turned into fools. There's something coming on, but our colors fade in the sun.
It's nice to have that parallel major chord there. I think it's a lovely way and an unexpected way to finish that. It sounds very bittersweet. Guitar solo. Lovely use of that tremolo bar on that guitar solo there. Nice and wide. Nice and wide. Oh, it's fading in and out like that. It's kind of creepy, isn't it? Kind of sounds like it's crying out. I haven't really heard instruments crying since I listened to For the Love of God by Steve Vai, but this is kind of, I mean, obviously, like, that's a baby crying in For the Love of God, as I understand it, but still. Babies are animals? I don't know. Technically, everyone's an animal, isn't he? Got the wolves crying out, dude. Again, like, I got lost in the music and didn't necessarily pay as much attention as I needed to the chorus. Hey, what? Go. Here we go. I'll go back a little bit, Bill. There we go.
Though other cries sound so close by, floating downward, spinning, screaming. Yes, we're slowing, but much too slow for the fall.
So we're talking about animals and everything like that, and how even if we're trying to reduce the amount of damage we're doing, it's still not enough, and we're only really caring about our human children and not the other children of like Mother Nature and stuff like that. Is that right? I'm not sure. I could have that wrong completely. I shouldn't base it entirely off of a verse, but then again, the verse is typically the thing that tells you the main crux of a song, or at least identifies one of the main ideas and concepts. A stunning song, and very bittersweet. Again, very different to the Cloud Uberveillance, The Coast, and Dilmun. The Bloke upstairs, I assume, is probably going to be different as well. I've got some hand drums in there. Some shimmery pads. You never know what you're going to get with Greg and Martin. I liked how we inched our way to the resolution at the end, and how we were like, sort of like we took the risk with that semitonal shift. I think that was great.
Don't know why. Smile a little smile.
Some Latin rumba dance vibes, my dudes.
It's nice to see you, but Who's that bloke upstairs? Wandering in the dark, I rest my eyes. Stumbling through the day, I hear the cries of people passing by. Yeah, who's that bloke upstairs? And what's he doing here? Is he someone I once knew? And if I see your face again, will I remember you?
Yeah, we got some synthetic electro vibes coming here occasionally, like in the hook and at the end where it kind of surrounds you and clamps onto your ears. What do I make of this song so far? How do I take this part? It's more of an additional layer of harmony and melody to this track, I suppose.
What's he doing here? Is he someone I once knew? If I see your face again, will I remember you?
So we got Who's Upstairs? If I see your face again, will I remember you? But there's several ways I could take that. Like, do we get another verse or is it?
Through the clouds, molten skies, orange turns to gold, a new sunrise, reaching out to me, that bloke upstairs.
So are we talking about, is the relation they're talking about with that person next to whoever's singing here, are they in a position where they might die and like, will I remember your face? And I don't get this one. And then like you're concerned, you're flying through the clouds and the man upstairs is holding out their hand. Confused, dude. It's kind of trippy having the vocals wow, wow, wow on the side. I'm not sure if I like it. It's not that I think that the overall harmony or the musical content is bad. It's like the textures and how it's like feeling when I listen to it through these headphones. It's just very close in here, and you can like it's easy with somewhat okay bass response. There's like it feels unusual. It's like they're whispering in your ear, and I don't know why, because I don't understand what the song's about. I don't want to take it too literally. Like at face value, we were talking about like God and like death and flying through the clouds and going to heaven and all that kind of stuff. Things turning to sunrise and going through the gate. But at the same time, I don't want to take it too literally. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think this was a good track. I think that there were parts of it that were definitely likable, and I'm glad they were trying a different style of music, like these sort of extended kind of South American vibey chords and the you know, kind of groove there that and those dance rhythms. At the same time, I don't know, man. I suppose this may be something from their personal experience that they're kind of relating to in a song, and then that's fine. Yeah, sorry if that was a complete mess of words. I'm just not sure if I'm vibing with that track, that Bloke Upstairs. I really like the other four, and I think this is definitely like an okay song. It's just not my favorite. I didn't really relate to it, and I think this was more of a personal song for the musicians involved, and that's totally fine. We got You and I. Okay. Choir with some strings, pads. And we got some neoclassical elements coming in. This is fun. This is different again. 17th, 18th century opera. orchestra. That's a... Oh. Switching to a triplet. I'm kind of wondering, hang on a minute. I could have sworn that You and I was a track I'd listened to from Greg before. Oh,
it's not far.
Straight into that minor harmony there. We've had 2 or 3 different themes here. I'm wondering how they all connect.
It's not always black and white to be there at the end. You just have to care. It's time we both stop the fight. If we're rich or we're poor, it's the roll of the dice. It's all about number one.
Yeah, that was a tricky way we approached that. It could be seen that we were trying to make things a little bit more tense with the uncertainty with that delivery there. And I adore the fact that it is like that so much.
It's happened before.
It's so heavenly and
happen some more.
fluffy.
We run and run. You and I must choose, or we will lose.
Now that was interesting. Wait, are we going into another chorus here? Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm trying to sort of... Wow, this has been a ride, hasn't it? This track. Go back a little bit. I want to get the context for everything there. No. Now I'm just breaking everything, apparently. I think it was about there.
You and I must choose.
Okay.
Or we will lose. Me and you have so much to do, to become you and I.
Like, I like the orchestral instrumental elements of it. I think for the most part, they're great. There are some decisions that are being made that are really tricky, finagly ones in regards to the harmony and the way certain chords and notes flow into each other between sections. And it's done, it's very articulate, it's very intelligent.
Things are happening fast. They can't stay the same. Things are not going to last unless we can change. Please hold me close, safe.
Like, I like this. I can understand it. They may be talking across the phone to each other, and there's a contrast between the loud and the phone bit, dialogue between 2 people, and they're kind of in agreement, even if they're in separate places.
Tight. We both know what to do. It's easy to see. So I'm looking to you. It can't be just me. We both know what's wrong and right.
Again, lovely harmonies there.
You know it's a sin. Take care what you say. To do nothing and turn away. Whatever the pain, if it's yours or it's mine, there's so much to gain. Just give me a sign. Let's start today.
So this song's basically about starting over from like a ruptured or a fractured relationship and trying to find peace within the future and trying to, like, I kind of get it. I kind of get it a little bit, I think.
You and I must choose.
I like these church choir elements because it talks about, like, in marriage. I think that it reminds me of, like, someone being in the church and the vows you made to that person when you got together. I think that's a really cool touch there.
Or we will lose. All that we once had. have so much to do to become
Coming together.
you and I.
Okay. We didn't resolve to the major there, but the music did it for us. It's almost like this song doesn't really want to say how things turned out. It's kind of expecting the listener to predict how things ended up for the people involved. I think that's a smart decision. Ooh, some lovely fingerstyle there. Harmonics, natural harmonics, well done, awesome. Right, that was a far stronger track to me. Like, I understood this one better. I'm sure that if I listened through that bloke upstairs a few more times, I'm gonna do it.
Smile, don't know why.
I don't want to half-ass this review.
Don't know why. You smile a little smile, wave bye-bye. It's nice to see you, but who's that bloke upstairs? Wandering in the dark, I rest my eyes. Stumbling through the day, I hear the cries of people passing, but yeah, who's that bloke upstairs?
All right, well, I mean, like, I could take it as someone being led astray from the path they're meant to be on to ascend to heaven or something. They're saying, yeah, I know who you are, but, like, who is that person upstairs? If I get involved with you, am I going to get out of this scot-free? That's my kind of interpretation of it.
What's he doing here? Is he someone I once knew? If I see your face again, will I remember you?
If I see your face again, will I remember you? Or is it, this is my, like, last kind of guess of what this track is about, because it's a little bit open-ended for me. Could it actually be the person that's smiling at you is talking about maybe the person that you know, whoever he's talking about, are they gonna end up, are they gonna die, are they gonna end up there? And you know, whoever's singing is saying, yo, who is that that's up there knocking, you know, like, are they looking for you? You know, I feel like I might have butchered this one a little bit. Not one of my finest efforts. I think I reviewed the track in most other ways the best I could. Before I go to take my break and come back to this tomorrow, I want to say that I think for the most part, the vocals are lovely, really well done in terms of the vocal technique. There are two different vocalists, but they work well together, and the context they perform in makes sense. I think that the songs structurally are always intriguing because you never quite know what you're going to get. The parts flow effortlessly between each other, you know, and each of the tracks have their own unique identity, which makes them, again, obviously easily identifiable. I'm not sure how the tracks come together and will work with each other as a greater concept. As I understand it, they were just kind of right. What was it? It's the first time I've come across something like this. Usually you either have people who haven't quite figured out how this all works, and so you get mixed results, or you get people who are, actually there's three. There's people who know what they're doing and it's still not totally, it's good, but it's not amazing. And then you have people who are phenomenal and they know what they're doing. And I definitely say a lot of the stuff is really, really good. I can tell there's some resonances with certain instruments and parts, which maybe didn't need to be as present as they were in regards to everything else. Again, I know I'm not perfect, but that's just my sort of interpretation of it. The EQing mix, you know, like the spatial stuff, occasionally some of those things on the side were a little bit loud. You know, for the most part, delays, reverb chains and stuff. There were some fun ideas with the panning and sort of automation and fade outs. And yeah, well done to both musicians, Greg and Martin, for their work so far. Anyways, all right, and instrumental performances so far. I'm just loving the competencies across the range of different instruments. You had so many like drums, guitars, and sort of other stringed instruments, bass, synths. had vocal harmonies and different vocal chops and different vocal samples and Foley of stuff and distortion and electronic elements. There's just so much. But I'll catch you tomorrow. See you soon. So I'm actually recording this the day after the tomorrow I mentioned in the previous one. A busy day or two. Today we'll be checking out the last 6 tracks from Paint by Numbers to the Cloud Uberveillance number part 3. Of course, this album from Nothing at All, which is Martin Hale, Greg Barnett and Martin Hale, as I understand it. Yeah, I'm familiar with Greg Barnett, but I'm still Martin Hale is. I know my brain's kind of fuzzy on that one, but yeah, Nothing at All by Greg Barnett and Martin Hale. So we're going to start with Paint by Numbers, continue to the end. Then we're going to do a big old conclusion, and then we'll be sorted. So let's continue. Paint by Numbers. Whoa, okay, we're straight into it. There is no filler. Okay. Alright, no chill. Oh, we got some saxophone in there. We got a rolling bass line with the drums. This is a very perky little one, isn't it? Wonder who wrote this one.
We looked at you through loving eyes, faces into the fence.
Some lovely clean guitar arpeggios there.
He was Greenland, 7 red sunshine stole through the canvas. Paint by
Guitar?
numbers, think through time. Love before life leaves you. Buttons and bows.
Getting some Pink Floydish vibes from this. That distorted guitar is interesting. I don't really get a lot with that, with stuff I listened to from Greg Barnett before. So it's a nice little addition here.
Jog on the grass always, always, always.
Nice resolution there with the bass. And the saxophone taking over the vocals as the lead instrument. Cool. Well, that's a sexy sax line there.
The music moved our minds at will, spinning, lost within the feeling. Lights up north, just holding hands for those precious stolen seconds. Paint by numbers, think through time. Love before life leaves you. Buttons and bows, jog on the grass always.
I don't know what the song is about. I don't quite get it.
Always in my dreams.
I understand the musicality of it. I understand how the different instruments are combining together, and I love the tone of it and the coloration of the overall harmonies and everything. The consistent groove of the percussion. And I even like some of the vocal melodies, and I love those sax bits. Those are really cool. I love the ornamentation, legato runs and everything, the little trills and such. But I don't know what the story is.
Always there, so it seems.
Always there, so it seems. I'm going to get some more context later on. Or have we been given the context and I missed it?
We looked at you through loving eyes, faces into the fence. Lights up north, just holding hands for those precious stolen seconds.
Yeah, I think this is just a little bit too out there for me. I don't quite get
By
it.
numbers, think through time.
Like Paint by Numbers, when that title there, it talks about following the rules and doing things according to the instructions that you've been given, keeping things sort of regular and not too outside of the ordinary.
Love before life leaves you.
Love before life leaves you. And we've got an interesting little tail end on that melody there, the vocals. Ooh, I like that. I liked how that worked.
Jog on the grass always, always, always.
I don't get it, man. I feel kind of dumb, really, to be honest. I don't think I took my stupid pills today. It's sometimes you just hear tracks and you can appreciate how they're written and what they're trying to say without really knowing what it's about. And sometimes that can be a dangerous game, but I'll give nothing at all the benefit of the doubt. Sounds sort of whimsical, doesn't it? Like it's floating, like it's not taking itself too seriously. There's a bit of an ambivalence to the overall tonality of it. We're gonna fade out here. Is it meant to be poetic? Is that it? Is it meant to be metaphors for stuff? Is there some inside stuff going on? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Paint by Numbers. I dug the instrumentation of it, the performances on display. I think the saxophone solo then was fantastic. It's a nice additional coloration to it. A layer that we haven't heard a lot of so far, and I don't honestly hear enough saxophone nowadays in music. But yeah, that was Paint by Numbers. We've got Running from Red. Okay, we've got either a DI'd guitar, a DI'd acoustic, electric acoustic.
Silhouettes in the trees.
Okay, we got some hand drums as well with lead guitar and there was some vocals.
Stealing food from the fields. Flashes in the sky. Running from red.
Stealing fruit from the field, I kind of need to put a bit of extra work in to make up for the fact that I couldn't understand Paint by Numbers. Running from red, is it like being punished for stealing food so that you can live or something like that? Or is it metaphorical? Very subtly like that.
My family is torn apart. There's terror in the air. Running from red.
Running from red. Okay, so they got a bit dark that time, talking about the family being in danger, running from red. So, like, there's two ways you can take red. Like, red is the danger, whatever it could be. Red also has a bit of symbolism with, like, communism and stuff like that. And when you're talking about, like, stealing from the fields or your family being in danger, you know, arguably some of the more hardcore communist stuff could be, like, related to, like, families struggling throughout famines and stuff like that. And I don't want to get too political and that kind of stuff, but there's various ways you could take it. I don't think that these guys are shying away from talking about the heavy stuff. But of course, it's open to interpretation. That's the beauty of music in general. I like the mix for this one. Everything seems to work really well together and it's set nicely. Oh, we got those synth pads.
20 years from now, when we laugh and cry together, we'll remember how.
Oh, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum, flat -7, flat 5, or something like that. Yeah, you play that solo. I like it. We have that soulful approach to it. We're not shredding for the sake of the quick notes. Like, don't get me wrong, I like my fast solos, I like my shred, but there's time and a place where it's appropriate.
20 years from now.
I like how we cater these different melodies to transition into these interesting chord arrangements and transitions we have there. I like how they're not typical or usual and how it sounds weird, but it still works. A bit of vocal fry there, that was nice. We laugh and cry together, will we remember how? Like how it was to feel that?
How we lost all that we had. But brother, you and I know you gotta keep your head when you're running from red.
Oh yeah, we're talking about the alarms, the sirens and stuff like that, running away, being in danger. I get it. Oh, you got that Foley on the left. Is it talking from a war zone or something like that? Was this like a battle that people are involved in? Sounds horrific, to be honest. Sounds horrific. The complexities, the harmonies within this arrangement show the complexity of the situation, but overall it's a very sad song. Very intense here. Very sad. Yeah, I see this to be quite a personally important song for the musicians involved. I don't really know what it's like growing up in a situation like that or experiencing that, but I know for a lot of people, especially in the older generations, who might have been involved with wars or who lived in places where it was like a war zone or there were these situations occurring, they probably had to relate to songs like this, and hopefully they can find some kinship there and some healing. We've got the Cloud Uberveillance, Valence, Part 2. Oh, I remember this. This was the first track, wasn't it? Yeah, there we go. Cool.
Turn it off, let me turn you on.
That's charming, eh? I like this. I'm liking this organ, this change, and this adaptation in the second part. I'm not sure what it's trying to represent, though. Is it meant to be an interlude or a break between the other bits of content within this album? Like, is there a specific reason why it's between Running from Red and Scent of Summer? Love it. Is that like a Hammond organ or something like that? What kind of organ is that they're using? I love the tone of it. It sounds so fresh. A solo going on there. Rolling with those chromatic semitonal shifts. Oh, we're fading out. It came and went. Part 2 of the Cloud Uberveillance. It's a shame. I was kind of digging it. Again, like coming out in 2015. We really haven't gotten a hint that maybe, you know, it could be dangerous having all of this surveillance of who we are as a generation, you know, as a people, as a civilization. Scent of Summer, track number 10. Oh, more of those hand drums. with the drums, the guitars. Oh, that's quite loud in the mix, that one there. That's quite loud in the mix there, I'm gonna be honest. That's sounding quite, I mean, it could just be these headphones, but
Golden sunset,
that's a bit better. The vocals are sitting okay.
First time, colorblind, always falling. Scent of summer.
Yeah, there's a clear understanding of music theory and composition here. We're rolling with some complex jazz arrangements almost with these acoustic fingerstyle parts and the extensions of these. You know, the note choices, the voicings are amazing, and that's always been a strength of what Greg has done with his music.
Second nature, so it seems, always falling.
These are not easy songs to write. They take experience and time to figure out.
You always made us two. You never let it fail. Now destiny is blowing. Scent of summer.
Oh, that got a little bit glorious there for a moment. Then I love the pulse, the beauty and the shine of that part. I know there's been a compressor applied to this lead line here with the guitar. Just in the intro, it got a little bit spicy, that's all.
You always made us two. You never let it fail. Now destiny is blowing. Scent of summer. Fear hiding under clouds. Safe haven never found. Drop your anchor. Scent of summer. Always falling. Scent of summer.
I'm trying to connect the scent of summer to what they're describing there. They're talking about dropping anchor and everything like that. Is it about taking rest and taking stock of your situation? Is summer the time where we can sort of take a break and relax? Oh, this piano line's a nice change there. Lovely reverb tail on it. The presence of it is set at a good level. You didn't want to resolve in that route, no, did you? You wanted to go for that 9th up there, or that 11th? Yeah, that 9th actually, that was a 9th, I think. I'm going to go back through that first verse again just to clarify what the song's about.
Scent of summer.
Let's listen together. Let's listen to it together. Okay.
Golden sunset, shivering. First time, colorblind, always falling. Scent of summer. Running riot through dreams. Second nature, so it seems, always falling.
Always fallen, scent of summer, running riot through dreams. I'm not sure how this is all connected.
Scent of summer.
I don't get it.
You always made us two. You never let it fail.
You always made us do, you never made it, let it fail. Now destiny is blowing, scent of summer. So like the scent of summer is the that destiny is the scent of summer. So their future is in the summer or something like that, or maybe their best times are in the summer. Like maybe that they're thinking about summer and what it means to them. Maybe that's what it's all about. Maybe summer represents more than literally just being a holiday season or a time where people can relax. Maybe their happy memories come from that time. Maybe that's what that is associated with. I like the song for the most part. There are a few bits of the mix where it's like, oh, that's a bit present. That's a bit perky. Aside from that, a lot of the elements work really well together. The vocals sounded nice here. We clearly know how to transfer between different triads and on all that. And I love the piano, shift the piano timbre and textures in that last bit as well. It was a nice way to finish the track. We've got another year. Oh, we got some brass in there. Fun.
Another birthday, another year gone.
All right, cool. We got this.
Go back and wonder, where's it all gone?
Oh, that's depressing, isn't it? Oh, okay.
There's so much to do.
I thought we were going to go for a 12 bar. I'm having a day, aren't I? I thought we were going to go for a 12 bar blues transition there where we went bum, 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 and then boom, and then you go back into the verse again. But we ain't got that.
To make me a mark and make it mine. Put down that credit card. Get out of that car. Breathe in the sweet breeze. Find who you are.
Oh, is this song about like not letting time pass you by and making the most of the opportunities you have and not like getting overworked and stuff? Because if so, that's dope. I'm reading a book about that recently called Do Nothing. It's really important to value your time and to have time not to be constantly doing things. That's kind of cool. I can relate to this, I think.
Making waves and money ain't everything. Time's on your shoulder and time's gonna win.
Yeah. There's something like drums or something that's very, very far on this side of my headphones, on the left side of the stereo field. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. It's weird to have the kick and the snare on the left side of the stereo field. Yeah, I have to admit, I'm not sure if I'm vibing with that being the placement of it, primarily because it's just a staple for the drums, the kicks, and the snares to be in the middle. But if these guys want to roll with something a little bit more alternative or even avant-garde, then go for it. I mean, we got the shakers. Maybe they thought there was too much stuff happening in the center of the stereo field. I'm not sure, but I don't get that often. Because that's a conscious decision to move it on that side.
Less time remaining than what's gone before.
I mean, like, it would have been cool if they had it going like ooh, across the term of the track, kind of like a clock hand or something like that. I could have imagined that being the case.
There's no use crying. There ain't no more. So love your loving friends and your family, 'cause you'll soon be the dead wood in the family tree.
Damn, son. I get it. I get what the song's about. I couldn't really get sense of summer. I had no idea what Paint by Numbers was. But most of the other tracks I think I've got the hang of. You know, we've had some guitar solos in here, which is nice. We've had some interesting stuff occurring with the brass as well. I like that as a coloration. It's almost like the trumpets are celebrating your birthday, but it's almost like your impending doom at the same time. Like the trumpets, the bell tolls for thee, you know? That's one of the most unique, like, electric guitar tones I've heard, man. I'm not sure if I'm super vibing with it, just because it's very fluffy, but that's okay, man. Or what they want to do. Some people like the fluffy guitar tones. Slide guitar. I mean, like, if we were wanting to have two different sources of percussion, I kind of get why we want it. But then it's like you've got to weigh up how much you want to stuff into your composition. Where is the point where it's a beneficial or a detriment to have that extra thing occurring, you know? I think there's an okay balance here aside from the panning thing that I spoke about before, but I love how much energy there is and activity within the different instruments. You can hear the bass constantly. That's EQ'd and filtered really well, which is why I think that the decision with the snare and kicks was a deliberate one to account for the tambourine. I think she got a tambourine. Would you believe I got a tambourine over there outside of green screen land? I keep forgetting I have one. I also commonly forget the name of it and I call them shakers because that's just how my brain works apparently. I love how the bass line is so active in contrast to the openness and the sort of the sus nature to those open chords. I like that we have different parts doing different things and we're not attempting to layer or stuff too much effort or energy or impact into one specific area of the song itself. Yeah, great song. I mean, like, there was tension in the parts where they were talking about how time is gonna, like, it's going to outrun you, you know? I think that the messages in this are valid for a lot of people in this day and age, and I don't think that's changed between 2015 and now. If anything, people are working harder, and it's just worse, man. Although, to be fair, a lot of people there's a great, like, resignation occurring in some parts of the world where people are quitting their jobs because they've been working too hard for too little pay. So I think some people are getting a hint that maybe destroying yourself for your job isn't the right thing to do. Or for whatever else. But the cloud Uberveillance. Hang on a minute, can I just listen to that at the end? What was that last thing? I thought I heard something there. I totally did, I heard a clock. Because the clock's running, right? I get it. I knew I heard something interesting there. And the last track today, the cloud Uberveillance, or Valence. There's some pulsating, weird writhing stuff happening on this side. We got a love for the emphasis being on the left side of the headphones, don't we? It's very different to part 2. Wonder, oh, it's evening out on both sides now. Oh no, this is returning to that theme. No, it's okay, I get it now. Violining occurring on that lead line there? Or strings? Oh man, it's a violining. Dude, I don't know, man. My brain's...
Misty view, misty view, misty view, misty view. Chipped and tagged, chipped and tagged, chipped and tagged, chipped and tagged. In the cloud, in the cloud, in the cloud.
I don't like that. I don't like that talking stuff that's occurring here.
Moonlight makes you stay. Moonlight makes you stay. Moonlight makes you stay. Track what we do. Track what we do. Track what we do.
I don't like this. It's making me feel uncomfortable and guilty.
Stored somewhere forever. Stored somewhere forever.
I know this is riffing, excuse the pun, on the, wait, is it a pun? On like what the first track was talking about when he was speaking his poems.
Strove for freedom, once held the prize. Look in the mirror, look in your eyes. If love still beats within you all, embrace, look up, be human once again.
This is the big finish, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Bum, 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 bum. Lovely sequence there with the eighth notes, with that lead guitar line there. Oh, we got kids. This is charming, isn't it? This is lovely. I love this Foley. I like everything that's going here. It's nice and positive and charming. It also sounds like we're listening to a YouTube advert. You know the ones where they have the bop, 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 and it talks about you can use your device to do this thingy-mabobber. Which is, I don't know whether that's ironic or not. Is it meant to be like removing yourself from it and getting away from that garbage surveillance stuff to spend time with your family and to enjoy that? Is that the aim here? Or is this the happiness you'll experience whilst being a part of it? I don't know now. I totally called it. I knew that it was all about being in a simulation and getting lost in there and sucked in and never being able to return. And then it getting sort of shut off. I get it. I knew that was coming. It seemed too good to be true. And then everything ends. I mean, in regards to a conclusion to this album, you know, nothing at all. You know, like, if I was to talk about this just in general for a moment, this has been one of the most unusual albums I've listened to. It's like, it's a collection of songs that were individually written by two different people, but they were put together as in a spirit of them figuring out how to record, produce, distribute their own music, etc. It's not something I'm typically used to. Like, if I actually, hang on. Let me see if I can be smarter about this. Here we go. There we go. We can see the album art and the tracks. I want to say that I enjoyed this album as a whole. I think it's clear, considering like the level of production on some of Greg Barnett's more recent releases, like the Flat White album, that there was some things that both of them were still working out during the process of recording this album, but I think for the most part it was very well done. I think first of all, congratulations are in order for being able to collaborate on a project like this while not co-writing stuff, but being able to release something with someone else. That is something to appreciate. That's a phenomenal achievement. I say that as someone I personally haven't figured it out because I'm a complete control freak when it comes to writing music. So I have an admiration for other musicians who can work with other people, even if they're not co-writing music, but just if they can collaborate on a project at all with someone else and get it to a point where it's released and it sounds like this. So well done to Greg Barnett and Martin Hale on this release for Nothing at All's Prescient, the album. 2015, I think, releasing an album independently in 2015, we've had such a massive level of development in regards to how we record, mix, and master music in home studios and otherwise. It's in the last 5 years, especially with the advent of subscription services where you can pay like $10 a month or $15 a month to get access to plugins that are about at 80% of the level of what professionals use, with those pieces of equipment individually being about $20,000, or even if it's like $1,000. The cost of stuff to record alone has gone down so much that you would think that it would be far easier to produce stuff at a higher quality, but ironically it has shown the weaknesses of a lot of people who previously used the cost as an excuse. However, I don't think that Greg Barnett and Martin Hale are them. I think that they both, and from a conclusion, because I've got to conclude this video, right? This album the album talked about lots of different things. I think it talked about like a relationship with God and the afterlife, the coast, sort of different sort of cultural experiences and influences. You and I suppose, relationships, or talking about the intricacies of those. Running from Red, talking about like the dangers and the risks and like being in sort of situations which are less than ideal, and when things get really dark and the tragedies that can occur within that. Sent to Summer, being reminded of people and things by different situations, with Another Year talking about not wasting time. And The Cloud Uberveillance basically being about us being monitored and tagged and stuff, and this all being a simulation that will eventually get shut off. There were some tracks I didn't understand, like Paint by Numbers, or even that Bloke Upstairs, or Colors Fade was a little bit of a weird one for me. But I tried to understand it. I know I had another listen through that Bloke Upstairs, and I think I got it as much as I could. It could just be down to the fact that these stories were so true to the original writers of them that literally a listener experiencing it for the first time couldn't possibly pick up on the you could take everything at face value and write down the lyrics and sort of pan them out and sort of spread them and sort of try and gauge it, but I think that there is more of a deeper meaning to that, and I tried to base the observations I made on what I heard at the face value, as well as some of the other inferences involved from like the music, the tonality, the emotional content. But like this is definitely a decent album. I'm not disappointed with what I had to hear today. I think that while, like the vocal performances were pretty stellar, Martin Hale and Greg Barnett have different voices and different ways of articulating themselves. But I think that they're both fairly good at what they do. It made sense in regards to the context of the tracks they were performing, and they emoted well, and you could tell that it was like more of a raw performance. Like there were the typical reverb, the effects changes stuff, but there was none of that modulation, auto-tune kind of stuff. And even if there was some modulation on certain parts, it was for a deliberate stylistic effect. It wasn't like they were doing it to try and make up for a crappy performance or something. The songs themselves were some of them were through composed, some of them were sort of ABC's, verse, interlude, chorus parts. But ultimately, this track was stylized for the condition of the story, and it was designed purely from a freedom of creativity standpoint, where I don't think they were trying to paint by numbers at all. I think they were just trying to make the music that meant what it needed to with them. And I think that's great. I think that's awesome. Well done. I mean, like the instrumental performances as well were fairly golden. I loved the articulation, the sophistication of the different chord progressions and the melodies and the complexities of the instrumentation and the arrangements. You know, there was some parts of it that were really high level, and you would need to have been studying music for a while in order to be able to understand or accomplish. But then it also comes from someone who grew up in the 90s and the 2000s, where the average complexity of a pop track, for example, diminished greatly from the 70s, for example. I, at 30 years old, do not have the blessing of being around listening to music in the 70s and 80s. So like, you've got musicians that are like a little bit older than me, and they've had a little bit more time to listen to a lot of other sort of really cool pieces of music. And I think that's great. That's definitely a benefit, definitely a positive. Greg Barnett has, now I can't really speak too much for Martin Hale, although they're phenomenal musicians, both of them, has something special going on with the music that he's writing. I think that he has his own sort of tonality. He brings forward a lot of different influences from other musicians that are special to him and creates tracks which are meaningful, unique, and original. And I adore it. And while I may not always understand what the tracks are about, I feel like they're nonetheless very meaningful, and I adore it for that. The production, before we get into production, actually no, the production is to do with the sort of synthetic kind of electro elements. You had interesting combinations of so many different instruments. You know, this wasn't just a guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and even piano kind of vibe. You had different kinds of electronic and acoustic drum kits plus hand drums and other ones. You had shakers as well. You had like different types of guitar, clean, acoustic, distorted, lead, rhythm. I'm assuming it was just electric bass, so there could be other types of bass instruments. There were synths as well. I think like pad, lead synths and all that kind of stuff. Organs, pianos, keyboards, brass instruments, strings, and all those other ones like in Dilmun, where you had like I don't know the names of them still. I was gonna like Google them, but I'm not gonna assume there's one instrument that was played in that song that's you know, like there's just so much to put in there, and for them to have recorded, mixed and mastered as well as they did is great and should be commended. It's not an easy thing to tame that many elements within a track. It's really difficult, but they managed to do it for the most part. There were some decisions that were made in this album that I was like, did that need to be done like that? But they did it, and it didn't necessarily distract entirely from the musical experience. I'm not sure why we had the kicks and snares on one of the songs on the left side, but and there were occasional peaks and volumes. But again, as someone who is still learning how to mix his vocals with a backing track during a review, I've really got no point to argue with that. Ultimately, though, I don't really know how this album makes me feel. It's one of those albums where I think I've listened to it once and I enjoyed it. I think this was a very personal album to the both of them, and I feel like this album will be more meaningful to the musicians involved in creating it than anyone else. However, it's a clear indication of what they're capable of, and I'm very, very proud of both Martin Hale and Greg Barnett for doing it, because it's important to make music that is authentic to who you are and what you want to do. That is where the best music comes from. And even if I might not have necessarily understood everything or loved everything within it, I can nonetheless, yeah. Nice work. But that's effectively, my camera got a bit weird there for a minute. That's effectively my review of Nothing at All's Prescient. If you enjoyed this track, please do go show Greg Barnett and Martin Hale some love via their various social medias. And I assume they're on Spotify or Bandcamp or whatever. Stay cool and stay safe, and please also remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. Catch you next review. Spider hands up.